Bob, an alcoholic. If you're, I'm just curious, how many people in here sponsor people? See, wow, okay. A lot of 5%ers in here. That's good. If your experience sponsoring people is anything like mine, it's the thing that will get a person I sponsor to call me in the middle of the night, frantic, on the verge of homicide, suicide, or both, usually is relationships. And there's a line in the book. It says we treat sex like we would any other problem. Well, in time, you see that that's true, but it seems when you first get sober, it seems like such a big deal. I mean, it drives some of us crazy. And I started to wonder why. And then through inventory, I started to discover Wilson hints at this when he talks in the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions about the three basic instincts that drive us. And because we are so self-involved and so fear-based, our instincts are on steroids, right? We really go, I'm the kind of guy that I'll just put a lock on my front door. I want bazookas and, electric wires and, I'm that guy. I take things to the extreme. And he says that the three instincts are the instinct for sex, God-given, everybody's got it. The instinct for security, and there's two types he talks about: emotional security, just being comfortable and safe, feeling safe, and also material security, to know that you have enough money and enough cash flow that you don't have to worry your bills are always going to be taken care of and you're good. And then the instinct for society. And this is a strong instinct that drives us. It's how we look to other people and what I think you think about me. And in sexual relationships, all three of those instincts can be threatened. And the greater the propensity for self-centered fear, the greater the inclination is to get bizarre and to control and manage and push and shove and go crazy. I sponsor a bunch of guys. I got 3 guys right now that they're just not even themselves. They're just insane. And it's all over broken relationships. They're just insane right now. And I'm doing what it says in the book: when sex becomes troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. So my whole focus with them is just, you got to get out of yourself. You got to start helping other people. And if they do that, and they try to act like someone who trusts God, they'll survive it. But sex wipes a lot of us out. I've been in a lot of meetings where people come back as a newcomer and they'll start talking about what happened. And somewhere in the mix, there was, you hear a lot of stories, a lot of tragic stories in AA from guys that they start off with, "I met this girl." Right? It's this is not going to turn out well. That's my sponsor tells this story. He says it's funny the way he tells it. He says he said the sentence that just makes sponsors just cringe is, "I met this girl." Oh. Well, so I start getting into the sex inventory, and to my surprise, it's not about sex at all. I mean, I often wonder if it really was about sex. I think 5th Steps would be more entertaining, I imagine, but it's not about sex. It's about, when it says we treat sex like any other problem, it's really about selfishness. It's about self-centered inconsideration because you're too wrapped up in you to pay attention and notice what's going on with them. It's about fear. It's about how, because we're afraid, we'll unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, and bitterness to keep our partner on their toes. because we're so afraid we're not getting enough attention from them, or we got to keep them off balance, or I can unjustifiably arouse it within myself as I obsess on my fears. And one of the things here, it starts off, it says, we do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. And I tell you something, that's a great thing for some of us, because over the years, I've talked to hundreds, if not thousands of alcoholics about this subject. And I've never met anyone who came to AA that was right with themselves in that area. Either their sex inventory has pages of names, or maybe just one person and they had to be drunk to have sex with them. And regardless of whether you're on the overly promiscuous side of a sexual spectrum, or the really uptight, locked up side where you can't have sex with anybody unless you're really drunk, nobody feels like they're okay. Nobody on the spectrum feels like they're enough. No, I've never met anyone who didn't have all kinds of hidden feelings of inadequacy and insecurity in this area. All kinds. The book says, we don't want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct, and then it says we all have sex problems. And I think the reason that this is such a big issue with us is because all three instincts can be threatened here. If you're in a long-term marriage, and especially if you live in a community property state, and it's threatened, and you're going through a divorce, your financial security is threatened. Your emotional security is threatened. Your sex is threatened. Your position in society is threatened, because I don't know anybody that wants to go to their home group members, their family, and their friends and say, I failed, and have to come out and tell everybody you were rejected, you're getting a divorce, I screwed up again. I don't know anybody that wants to say that. So all three of these instincts can be threatened. And so what we're going to look at, as it said in the very beginning of the inventory process, we're going to look how the manifestations of self had defeated us. And there's 9 questions on page 69. Don't even ask me why they're on 69. I have no idea. If I go to heaven and meet, or hell or wherever, and meet Bill Wilson, I'll say, did you plan that, or is that God showing off? I mean, what is that? I mean, I don't know. Who knows? It's odd that it's on that page, and it's either odd or it's not odd, or maybe it isn't odd, and I have an odd mind that just sees things odd. I don't know. But the 9 questions, we reviewed our conduct over the years past, and in each instance, and I'm looking for where. So these are bullet points again, just like in the second column. Where, just a little bullet point to get specific. Where in each relationship had I been selfish? Well, it's one thing to look in a general way and admit to myself, yeah, selfishness, self-centeredness, the root of my problem, and see that as a generalized way. But when you go through every relationship in your life and you look specifically where you were a me-first person, where you put your wants and needs before anyone else, and where you make it all about you and your comfort, and you're not wanting to be alone, and your security, and you see it in every relationship in your life, it's overwhelming. I never would have imagined I had selfishness at that depth and throughout my whole life. And never intending to be that way, but I was that way just the same. And I was asleep in my own life. I don't even know I'm selfish. I remember telling people when I got sober, I don't really get this selfish thing. I'm not a selfish guy. I'll share my bottle of wine with you. I'm not selfish. My mind was blown when I started to see how selfish I was. How it was all about me. Was I dishonest? I used to think I used to think I'm not dishonest. I am at times in relationships pathologically dishonest. It's an unconscious dishonesty. It's like our book refers to us as being people that are driven not only by 100 forms of fear, but by self-delusion. And what is self-delusion except psychotic wishful thinking? I meet someone. I'm sober. 12 years. I've taken a lot of inventories. I know that I need to be a certain way and show up a certain way in relationships and try not to be selfish and try to be honest, etc., etc. And I also know that I know pragmatically that from what I know about myself, I need to find someone that has certain attributes or certain things to make us compatible. Like I'm not going to get into a relationship with a person shooting methamphetamine. It's just not going to happen, right? It's not going to work. Or someone who's drinking all the time. And I don't want someone I can't trust with my money, who maybe is a compulsive gambler. I don't want I have certain little attributes. Maybe let's imagine 8 things that are deal breakers. 8 things that for compatibility's sake, I got to be a certain way, and that's the most important thing, is how I show up. But also, pragmatically, I'm looking for 8 things that would make us compatible. If I can be the way I know I need to be. Well, I meet some gal that's pretty, and she has one of the 8 things. It's usually good sex. And I start imagining that she has the other 7, or at least that she will under my tutelage. And then when she doesn't come around to being something she never professed to be in the first place, I'm getting pissed at her. Who's the crazy person in this equation? But I have this, isn't it selfish? It's selfish dishonesty driven by fear. The fear of being alone, the fear of not hooking up, and so I start to imagine that she is something she's not. And I'm the crazy person here. And why would I do that? Because it's all about me and my serving my comfort and my security. It's all about me. So there's a dishonesty, and I got sober single, and so I dated a bunch in sobriety, and there's a dishonesty you're not even conscious of. You meet someone, right? And you want to be, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be honest with them. And what you present to them is not really you. I'm introducing you to the best of Bob on steroids, Bob. Right? It's not real. I mean, I'll keep all the other stuff, I'll keep it in the shade because I believe something. I believe that if you knew everything about me that I know about me, that you will feel about me the way I feel about me. And that's not good. And so I misrepresent myself to people and keep everything that I feel I don't want you to see, that I'm afraid that you're going to reject. I keep it in the shade. And I'm not the only one that does that. I've had this conversation with a lot of sponsees, with gals in my home group that have done the same thing. And there's a time 2 people are dating for a while, and it's about close to a year later, and both people had a similar experience. And they'll both say things to their sponsor like, she's changed. No, she didn't. You're just finally meeting her. She was too afraid to let you see some of these things in her for all this time. And she's saying to her sponsor, he's changed. No. What you saw was the best of him. Now you're seeing all of him. And the tragic thing about that is people come away from that feeling deceived. They have a level of mistrust towards the person because you've misrepresented yourself, or I've misrepresented myself to you? And why would I do that? I do that because I'm afraid. I'm afraid that you won't like me as is. And I'll tell you what my experience is, not only with myself, but with sponsoring people. The more you feed that, the stronger it gets. Every time you have to be something you're not in order to have someone in your life, you're reinforcing the old idea that as is, you're not right and you're not enough. And I have a friend who, God, she's a gorgeous woman. She was a model, gorgeous. But she always felt she wasn't enough. And I think she's had close to 30 plastic surgeries. And she plastic surgeryed herself from being gorgeous to, she's starting to look like a cartoon. It's weird. It's not, and yet she's wants more and more. You're feeding a dog that the more you feed it, the hungrier it gets. The more I take actions that reinforce the idea that as is, I ain't right, the more not right I feel and I am. So what's the problem? It's just like any other fear. We trust God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. And so where was I dishonest? I tell guys I sponsor, I think, if you're going to date someone in AA, you just got to be right up front and tell them right up front. Everything. Tell them matter of fact, I'll tell you what. Show them on the first date, show them the worst of you. Show them the worst. Even if you're just an idiot and you're the worst of you is pull my finger, just go ahead and do that. Just show them the worst of you. Because if you show them the worst of you, you may one day be surprised that there's someone that will actually love you as is. That's sweet. That's sweet. But if you never risk it, you'll never find that out. I would rather have someone hate me for who I am than love me for who I'm not. The beginning of the chapter Into Action, it talks about us living he said, more than most, the alcoholic lives the double life. We create a stage character. We want to enjoy a certain reputation. We want to show people this. But in our heart of hearts, we know that's not us, not really. And it's hard to maintain the facade day in and day out, even though sometimes you can, but it's not really all of you. And so I encourage you guys, just be yourself. Risk it. Well, what if they don't like me? Who knows? It's better. You're better off. You're better off. Whom did I hurt? Oh, here, this question, was I inconsiderate? Oh, this is a whip. Selfish, self-centered people have a level of inconsideration that's unconscious, unmalicious, but yet it hurts a lot of people. And what it is I'm just staring at my stuff so much I don't see you, right? I'll tell you a couple examples. I have one guy who's been married a long time, and he adores his wife. He's very committed to her. He's worked his way up the corporate ladder. He's like an executive with a big company. He is tasked to attend a lot of dinner parties and where there's like muckety-mucks in the community, and he represents his company at some of these things that him and his wife have to go and attend, or they dress up. Well, it's very, very important to him to be punctual, because when he was drinking, he was always late, and it's a big deal for him to be punctual. So his wife, who loves him, wants to support him in all of this and be a good wife and come to these gatherings and be good representation of their marriage and everything else. Good gal. And she knows how important it is for him to be on time. So they're getting ready to leave. And this has happened over and over again to the point where he fibs about what time they have to leave the house. But they'll be ready to leave the house, and she'll walk by the mirror in the foyer going out, and she'll look in the mirror and she'll go, no, that doesn't work. And she'll go back in and start all over again to get ready. And he always makes him late, and it drives him insane. It's embarrassing to him. And yet she's not setting out to ruin his day. She doesn't get up that morning and say, I know there's an opportunity here to make him late for something and drive him insane. I just know there is. It's not a conscious or a malicious inconsideration. All she sees is herself. She doesn't even see the clock. She doesn't even see the time. She just sees the need to go change her outfit and redress herself. And it makes them late every time. So now he has to tell her they have to leave the house at 7. We have to leave at 6:30. And sometimes they're still late. Guys are even worse. Oh, God. I remember years ago I was dating this girl, and I'm a past chairman of the Las Vegas Roundup, the bigger convention. It's been in Vegas forever. And it's a big weekend for me, and I go there with my date who's not involved in the conference, never was. It means nothing to her, except it's another AA function that she's going to with her boyfriend, right? That's all it is to her. And we're standing actually in the corner of this hospitality room. It's a big room with 2 entrances. And down at the other side, coming through the door, is John and Mary Emma Holmes from Atlanta. And I hadn't seen them in a little while. And John just died not too long ago with 55 years. John was very important in a piece of my sobriety. He got me through a tough time. I love this guy. And when I saw him walk into that room, man, I was lit up. I was so glad to see him. I ran over to him. John, I gave him a big hug, and we started talking about stuff. Now that is my subjective reality. On the other hand, my date is left standing all by herself in a room as her boyfriend runs off to be with his friends. I didn't even know I did that. Later on, I knew more about me doing that than I ever imagined I needed to know. I knew all the nuances of that later. But it was not a malicious thing. It's the inconsideration of the selfish and self-centered. It's unconscious. It's unintentional. But it hurts people just the same. My first sponsor used to say, you're not guilty for anything you've ever done, drunk or sober, but you were responsible. You got to own it. You got to own it. My sponsor says something I really love, and it's so true. He says, people don't drink again from making mistakes. They drink from defending them. You can do anything. You can make a lot of mistakes in Alcoholics Anonymous. You could screw up big time. You can unintentionally hurt a lot of people. You can do a whole bunch of stuff here if you can stand up and own it and do whatever you need to do to try to make it right. Matter of fact, not only will you get free of it, it'll become something that's a part of your recovery that you will use for decades, possibly, to help other people who've made the same mistakes. Becomes a great tool in your arsenal if you can stand up and face it. So, did I unjustifiably arouse? Whom would I hurt? Did I unjustifiably arouse? To really get a consciousness of whom I've hurt, I have to put myself in their shoes. And I have to get what it must have been like to be involved with a guy like me, doing it the way I did it. What would that have felt like to be on the receiving end of my actions? Whom would I hurt? Did I unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where was I at fault? And here's the prime, I think, the most important question. What should I have done instead? And I'll tell you why I think that's the most important question, because later on it says that we're building a vision, an ideal for our future sex life. As a matter of fact, there's a prayer in there where we ask God to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them. And this becomes the benchmark, the direction for our future sex life. And if I'm going to build, if I look back over my past and all the hurt that was done and just the pain and all the crap, and I want to become different and I want to have relationships that are vibrant and alive and joyous, and I don't want to hurt anybody anymore, then I'm going to have to build this vision of my future based on learning the lesson from the past of what I should have done instead. And I'll tell you why this is so important, because in this world we live in, we get do-overs. It comes around again. Maybe it's a different person, maybe it's a different situation, but it's the same thing on an emotional level. You kind of think, I've been here before. Not with her, but I've been here before. And what did I do the last time, and what should I have done instead? Because if I don't have a vision of how I can ask God to help me to do something different here, I'm probably going to do the exact same thing I did before. And you see this evidence in so many sex inventories. It's like the same thing over and over and over. It's like you're looking at people who've repeated the same mistake dozens of times because they never learned from their past mistakes. They never got a vision of how they could have done it different. And so when it comes up again, they do the goddamn same thing again. And they reap the exact same thing. The patterns that some of us see and start to experience in our sex inventories are just kind of, oh my God, I never would have imagined. And so what should I have done instead? You know, there's a tremendous amount of mercy and a tremendous amount of redemption in this world. We get do-overs. And I can't tell you how many times guys by their own admission will tell you how they screwed up their first relationship, their first marriage, and they were terrible and they really, really regret it. And they've tried to make amends, and they don't even know how they could really fully make the amends, but they've done the best they can. And what happens is they get a do-over. In the next relationship, they get to do it different than what they did before. You'll see this a lot in Alcoholics Anonymous with men and women who will come right out and tell you what a terrible, terrible, abusive parent they'd been in their drunkenness and their drug use, and how they really, really hurt their kids. And, you know, in sobriety, they do everything they can to make it right. As a friend of mine says, this woman in AA, she's sober a long time, she said, whoever wrote the promise that we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it was never a drunken mother. Right? And so maybe you never fully make it right. But I've watched these exact same people become the most amazing grandparents. It's their do-over. They get redemption in the relationship with their grandkids that they couldn't get with their kids. They tried. They tried to make it right. They did everything they possibly could. But some of that stuff, runs deep. And God makes it right in their future relationships, maybe with their grandkids, maybe with their new wife, maybe with their new husband. That's a tremendous thing. That no matter how far down the scale you have gone, no matter how selfish you've been, is that we get a way here. A way will be shown in time to make all that right, put all that to rest. There's no one that has ever come to Alcoholics Anonymous that has been too bad for recovery. There's been a lot of people that have come here that have been too good for recovery, but nobody that's ever been too bad. And so no matter how far, no matter where you came from, whether you were someone who was so promiscuous or just has a record like 10 pages of people they've hurt through sex, or maybe you don't have anybody in you, that's your big secret. Maybe something happened to you when you were a kid and you can't have sex. You're just too locked up, too afraid of it, too scared. Doesn't matter. There's redemption here. The grace of God can overcome anything. In Alcoholics Anonymous, the impossible just takes a little longer, that's all. Stuff happens here. If you can give it a chance, if you can bring it out into the light of day and turn your consciousness towards God and try to bring grace into any situation, there's a healing here that's amazing. But it doesn't happen overnight. I was just talking to a guy recently who he's always had this problem in relationships, and you get to a certain point and then it always surfaces, and he's not been able to change it, and it's been a big item on his sixth and seventh step. And he's done what it says in step 6. He's asked God for the willingness. He's prayed about it. He's prayed about it. He's talked about it. He's prayed about it. And nothing's budging. And now he's in another relationship. He's hit the mark, and it's different. And he said, something's changed in me. And I said, when did that happen? And he said, I don't know. I just know it's different today. I'm showing up differently in this relationship than I ever have before. And I didn't do that. And I think that's how God's grace works sometimes. God works slow because he is old. And God's grace on transformation in Alcoholics Anonymous is very much like the type of marijuana they had back in the 70s. It's called creeper pot. Have you ever heard about creeper pot? You go out and you buy a lid, which new people don't know what a lid is. It's a baggie. You buy a lid of creeper pot, and you'd go home and you'd smoke the hell out of it. You'd smoke this stuff, and nothing would happen. And you know that guy ripped you off, and you'd be pissed. And I'm going to go straighten this guy out. And you're on your way to his house just to beat the crap out and get your money back. And about halfway there, you find yourself just sitting on the curb looking at the colors. You think, I've never been this high before. And when did that happen? You don't know. It creeped up on you. And God's grace sometimes creeps up on us. And one day you're in a situation you've been in a dozen times before, and something's happened to you, and you're different. And you didn't do it. Jeff.
Jeff, alcoholic. So, cover off on a few things. Before I get started, a couple of little house cleaning announcements. My friend Andre, who's up here in the corner here of the room, we work together. And I've had a few people ask me if Andre is Julie. From my previous story, yes, he is. So, please resent Andre on my behalf. And then the other thing, this is an old stupid joke, I'm assuming you all heard it, but maybe you haven't. Bob was talking about sex, and sometimes people call with sex problems, and you refer them to page 69, of course. I would caution you, though, not to screw that up and refer them to page 96, or this is what they will read. Do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. Search out another alcoholic and try again. You are sure to find someone desperate enough to accept with eagerness what you offer. Can cause a whole lot of trouble with that direction. So here's where we're at. Here's what's going on. As you probably have noticed, we're a little behind schedule here, having just completed now step 4. And that was actually intentional. This morning when we did the raising of hands, there were so many people with a year and under and 30 days and under that we made a decision that we wanted to spend more time on steps, really, quite frankly, 1 through 4, because we thought that was important. I'm going to talk a little bit about step 5, and I'm reluctant to do it because I'll tell you why. Sometimes 5, it's so closely tied to step 4. I have a theory. I don't know if it's true or not, but 5 tends to overshadow 4, 7 overshadows 6, 9 overshadows 8, because they're more results-driven steps at times. There's more gratification that comes from them. But in this particular case, sometimes I think 5 can overshadow 4 so much that you miss the journey. And step 4 is very introspective. It's about digesting and analyzing some big chunks of truth about myself. It's a journey I take to look at myself. And I want to make sure that I'm not robbed of that because I'm too preoccupied with thinking about having to tell someone this or read this to someone. So please, my little bit of my soapbox lecture would be, don't miss out on the portion of the journey that step 4 has to offer. It's where I remember first time I did a 4th step, when I got all done writing it, I read it, and I came upstairs. I was down in the basement working on it, and my face was white and ashen, and I was dumbfounded looking, and my wife was upstairs. She's like, "What's the matter?" And I'm like, I just completed my 4th step, and I read it, and I'm like, "Do you realize I absolutely insist on having my own way in everything I do?" She's like, "Yeah, I married you. I have known that from our first date." And like, oh wow, it was eluding me. So I have this inventory, and I've read it, and I've made some discoveries about myself. And now I move into step 5. And by the way, the reason I don't necessarily, I am reluctant to get into 5. I'm going to, but because I'm going to kind of leave you hanging. 5, quite frankly, 5, 6, 7, and 8, all should be done like this. These are not weeks in between these steps. I want to move pretty quickly once I get to this point. But I'm just going to share with you my experience on my 5th step. There's lots of ways to do it. I'm only going to give you mine. I know people who have done a 5th step with clergy and such, and they've done just fine. I don't know of anyone who's done it with their spouse and lived, but I have done mine all throughout my recovery with my sponsor. So I have this inventory. I've written it, and I'm now ready to do my 5th step. For me, of course, my sponsor lives in Las Vegas, Nevada. So I flew down there for the sole purpose of reading this list to him, which I thought, I wonder how many people, this is why they go to Vegas. You had all these people on the plane that partying and stuff. I'm all mopey. And it's like, geez, you haven't even got to Vegas. You couldn't have lost any money yet. Because that's usually how people look coming from Vegas, not going to. But I didn't have the elation. I was the exact opposite. I felt really good going home. Woo! And, but anyway, so I get down there, and I got the list, and we get together. And right away, my sponsor has we invite God into I think we were in a car. Invite God into a car. We're admitting to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrong. Let's make sure God's present. And then he did something to me that I found to be so interesting, and I've done it ever since when I listen to a 4th or to a 5th step. He said, hit me with the worst thing on them. Because we all have one or two things, right? They're on the very back. Sometimes they're not even part of the inventory. I wrote mine in the the side of the page in code, so that if someone, Mexican jail, pesos, nobody's going to know what that means but me. And I don't need anyone knowing my business, right? And so, but he was like, hit me with the worst thing on there. And what I found, and I found it to be true with people I've done this with too, is it turns the ego on you. It's like, you want the worst thing? I'll give you the worst thing. And because I don't want Bob thinking I'm a wuss with my worst thing. I stole a loaf of bread one time, huh? And I don't want that. So I got to hit him hard. I almost was ready to make something up just to impress him. So I hit him with what I perceived at the time to be my worst thing. And what happens is the rest of your 5th step is all downhill. I mean that in a good way, not in a bad way. But the momentum carries you. I've now told this big, dark secret. And like I said, we all have something, and I'll do this, and I won't press you, but just in your own mind, don't say it out loud. Think to yourself, what is the worst thing that would be on your 4th step? Okay? Get it in your head. Is it sex or money? Or if you're really sick, both. But is it one of those two things? Because almost always there is something hiding in one of those two areas that I feel such shame, such sorrow, such fear about. And we come to find, of course, that we're all the same. We're all the same. So I hit Bob with my worst thing. He didn't seem overly impressed, which kind of hurt my feelings. Because, you kind of want to, wow, Jeff, I've heard a lot of fifth steps. That's really unique and terrible. And thank you. I've always known I was a little sicker than everyone else. It's good. I'm glad to have that proven. And then we started going through. At the top of my resentment list was my wife. And I share this. I want to share this with you because I want to show the benefit. You may be wondering, why do I have to read this to someone? I know what I've done. God supposedly is omniscient. He knows what I've done. What is the purpose of me having to share this with another human being? And there's multiple reasons. The book, I think, is very clear. Of course, they talk about if we skip this step, we may get drunk. That gets my attention. If I try and avoid this humbling experience, I think there's an element of trust to it all. And I think for me, even though I've read my fourth step, I still have a lot of justifications and rationalizations that are inside my head concerning these situations. And when I read it aloud, I stand naked in front of a mirror. There's nowhere to hide anymore. And I now have a third-party observation to help me. Case in point. Top of my resentment list was my wife. The cause was that I had found out I forget how long, I had found out previously that my wife had horrifically mismanaged the funds. She hadn't told me about it. I didn't know anything about it. And then she had tried to take out a credit card loan to cover this and had to finally bring it to my attention. And I was mad. I was so mad that she had kept this from me, that she had mismanaged this so badly. And I'll tell you, I walk around imagining most of my harms. You should see how sanctimonious I am when there's finally a real one on the table. And I went in and I took control of our finances and I shut her out. I changed the passwords. If she needed anything, she had to come through me to get it. I was going to get us out of debt, right? And I had this resentment, and it affected everything. It affected my self-esteem and my ambitions and my relations and my sex, all of it. It affected. And I'm reading this to Bob. And I get to the fourth column, and I start mumbling. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm a little selfish. It's my money. But I don't know. And this is how I was going to do it. I was going to just whip through that fourth column. Because, let's be honest. This is a horrible harm. No time for fourth column here. This is about teaching lessons and rectifying someone else's mistake. Okay? It's the way God wants it. And so I'm going to whip through, mumble something in the fourth column to appease Bob so he thinks I'm sincere, and then get on to some other resentments. And Bob's over there. And he's like, just out of curiosity, who spent the money? Excuse me? And he's like, well, who spent the money? Well, I don't know why that has anything to do with anything. Why do we have to talk about that? Because the simple fact of the matter is that I had spent all the money, right? So I had to admit that. I'm like, well, I spent the money, but I didn't know. And so I was like, so you put your wife in a position where you want to run off and do whatever you do and buy things, and she's supposed to stop you when you get to a certain point. Yep, that's apparently what I did. And my part, or my mistake, if you will, because I'm sorry, actually, it doesn't say my part here. It says it in immense. My mistake became crystal clear, and it became very obvious to me. I could not see it through the forest. I couldn't see it at all. Even having inventoried it, I could not see that I really had any mistake in this situation. I was harmed, I was the victim, and I was going to teach a lesson. And I saw it crystal clear. I saw what a horrible position I had put her in and how unfair it was and how badly I had treated her because of it. She felt bad as it was. And I'm doing nothing to add to the solution. I'm piling on. I'm piling on to teach a lesson, handing out justice. And I saw it. I got a real crystal clear insight into my character and who I was. This one, by the way, I'm just going to finish the story. Later that night after I was done with my inventory, I did the returning home for an hour. I considered step 6 and the change in direction I wanted my life to go and became willing for God to remove these defects. Asked him in the 7th step prayer, made my 8th step list off of my inventory, which we'll talk about in a second. And I went home, and the first amends I made when I got home was to my wife. And I made amends for my wrongs. More importantly, I laid down everything we had in the bank. I said, these are our bank accounts. These are our passwords. This is your debit card. This is our problem. This will be our solution. This isn't Jeff writing in to fix your mistakes. It was our mistakes to begin with, and we will fix it together. I didn't have a bad marriage going up to that point, but I've had a different marriage ever since. It's been a stronger marriage. It's been a marriage based on partnership, equality, trust, and most importantly, recovery. There's been recovery coming into our marriage now that I think that to a level that really was not before. That's why this is so important. It's why it's so important that I do this. And I'm so grateful. Bob talked about do-overs. I'm so grateful that, Alcoholics Anonymous exists to allow us to rectify and correct these mistakes and these harms that we sometimes unknowingly commit. So I read my inventory, and as I said, sometimes I hear people say that they burn their inventory. I get it. I get the desire to want to do it. There's a bit of a problem in that later on in the process, it's going to say we have our 8-step list. We have our list. We made it when we took our inventory. I burnt mine. So I'm going to need that list. And so I had my 4th step list where I was able to transfer over most of the list of people that would make up my 8th step harms list. I was able to bring it off of my resentments, as I was able to see now and rectify my mistakes towards them, certainly in my fears, and of course my sex conduct. And I was able to transfer all those names over to an 8th step list and proceed to move forward on an amends. And I didn't have, again, on the end of my 5th step, I had some relief that it was over. I think, had a degree of feeling. I didn't have some lightning bolt, Bill Wilson spiritual experience by any means, but I felt closer to God. I felt a part of the human race, and I did feel somewhat cleaner inside. But most importantly, I had some hope. I had some hope that Alcoholics Anonymous could work for a person like me, because by that point I was starting to lose that. It was a quick, couple little stories. So I stayed at my sponsor's house, and because of the time change, he's 2 hours behind me. I tend to wake up really early, so I was up at 4 a.m, and I was still smoking. So I decided to step outside and have a cigarette. And unbeknownst to me, his house has automatic locks. So I stepped outside, and groggily smoking, and then I go to get back in, and the door is locked. And I thought, was my 5th step that bad that Bob just locked me out of his house? Because you hear stories of that, you're having these fears. But and I didn't want to wake him. I didn't want to be inconsiderate. So I just waited outside. Well, then it's in the middle of the desert, and some goofy ass sandstorm comes up, which I've never been a part of. But all of a sudden, there's sand blowing everywhere, and I'm just taking it. I'm like, well, maybe this is some lesson in humility. I don't know. I just sat up there shielding my eyes, smoking. Anyway, that has nothing to do with anything. And then, here's why you feel bad for me. And I headed off to the airport. This wasn't a vacation. I flew down there with a mission. We completed the mission, and I was now heading home because I had work to do. And so I headed on. And I had my 8-step list, and it dawned on me at the airport that I still had my inventory, though. I had not done anything with it. So I'm like, oh my God, what do I do now? So my sponsor, he dropped me off, and I called him, and I said, hey, I still have my 4th step. What do I do with it? He said, oh, I'm glad you asked. He said, I want you to look around the airport and find someone who looks really depressed, and then go up to them and give them that and say, here, read this. You'll feel better about yourself. And I got it. I didn't do that, by the way. I destroyed it. And that was the journey. There was things that cleared up by saying them out loud. There was a degree of trust that I was able to develop with another human being, which for me, I have to have. I have to sometimes the trust in the higher power, I need some skin on it because I'm not always good at reading what God wants for me. And sometimes my relationship can be tenuous. It's gotten a lot better, but I have to have a strong relationship with a sponsor in my life. And because of that trip and because of this process and because of these, admission and what we do here, I had gotten that. And I'll tell you, I call it my second surrender. I was somewhere in my teens and on my sobriety, and my recovery has been different ever since that journey through the steps. It's not without its pitfalls and challenges, but there's been something that's been changed in me. I was at a point in my life where, I don't know how I'm doing it. Okay, I'm okay. I was at a point in my life where I was active and doing things, not saying no to AA requests, but I knew there was something missing in me, and I couldn't figure out what it was, and I couldn't figure out how I could be at this point. I'm too active, I'm too whatever. There was something missing, and long story short, I had needed to have this second surrender. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. And Bob had come rolling into town. I was resentful at him for a bunch of reasons, none of which he even knew, and nor was even aware that I was resentful. And he came up and he just casually asked me, how are you doing? And again, we talk about fear making us cocky. I'm dying. So I overcompensate. I'm doing awesome. Thank you for asking. I will be over here receiving my adulation from people if you need me. And he just, smiled. And but something inside of me, oh, I know, he gave me his card. And he said, let's do coffee sometime. And on his business card, it said, when the spirit is sick, so is everything else. And Jesus, that hit me. I thought, oh my God, that's what's wrong with me. My spirit is sick and everything else is screwed up because of it. And I have to do something. And we met the next day and chatted, and I made a change of sponsorship, and I started a journey through the steps. So this isn't something that I do just not to drink. This is something that I do to change myself. This is something I do to connect myself to a power greater than myself, which I have to have for all of the reasons we've been talking about all day, most of which, of course, the idea that I'm going to die from this disease. I'm going to die from this illness if I don't do something. And that's what I've done. And that's what the journey has been. And it's been a remarkable thing. The coolest thing about it is there's that identification. I know I'm in the right place. I know I'm with the right people, and there's hope. I know if I do what you do, that I can get what you have. I know this thing can work for me too. And I've never been able to find a solution to what's wrong to my terminally unique problems. I've never been able to find a solution until I really got into Alcoholics Anonymous. But it truly has been the answer for anything and everything that's been wrong with me, because it takes me back to where I can fix things. It takes me back to these questions I need to be asking. Where am I wrong? What is my self-centered action doing? What do I need to do to make things right? And it allows me to be a part of. It allows me to be a part of God's universe, your life. And it allows me, to have a really nice life if I can keep the one person that has the ability to screw that nice life up, if I can keep that person out of the way, which of course is me. So with that, I think we're going to take a little break. The last session, we're doing the Ask It basket. So I don't know if there's questions or not. If not, I usually make them up and lob myself softballs. So, but hopefully there's some questions, and we will, it's 3:56. How about 4:15? What? Yeah. Oh, yep. Okay. Text.